Hey, all, welcome back to the Superhero Battle Room, all virtual up. So, hope you guys are excited for our interview day 2 with our Superhero Battle Room with Dave Nevarez. He is a U.S. Marine Corps veteran, hardest service, in my personal opinion, to go into. I just went into the Air Force, you know what I mean? So, and he's going to go tell us our story about him coming into service, going over and serving during Desert Storm, and going over and helping us to help transform, because as he made that war hero to superhero transformation, he's going to share that story with us. So we're going to have him join our live stream, and thank you for joining.
Hey, how are you?
Hey, all right. Hey, so thank you for going over and joining us, and we'd love you to start to tell us your war hero story about your service and what you did.
Oh, well, I come from a long line of military service, well over 100 years. Army, Navy, Air Force, Army, Air Corps, way back when. I started my time in service in South Texas, Victoria, Texas, to be exact. I was working my family trade was plumbing. My dad taught me to trade, and I was working with a plumbing company at the time. The biggest economy booster, Halliburton, was getting ready to pull out. And, I talked it over with my dad. My dad's a World War II vet. I was 16, 17 at the time, took the ASVAB. A couple weeks after I took the ASVAB, the phone was going crazy. Hey, come join, come join.
Mm-hmm.
And, I told my dad, I don't want to join the Army. Sorry. I don't feel the need to just bounce back from Germany to Texas. And so I go to the recruiting station. It's a substation. It's the main detachment's out of San Antonio. I was 2 steps inside the Navy recruiter's office. He wasn't out. I guess he was in the bathroom grabbing a sandwich or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Marine recruiter snatched me up. We began talking, and a few weeks later, my dad's signing for me. And once I got my diploma in my hand, I shipped off September '83 to boot camp San Diego.
Man, so what happened after that? So after boot camp and
After
AIT?
boot camp, boot camp, my job was logistics embarkation. I went to my school in Little Creek, Norfolk, LFTC Atlantic, Little Creek, Virginia. Then I went. Ironically, I went back to boot camp. I was stationed at Edson Range, Camp Pendleton, California, where recruits train with rifles, and it was at the time familiarization fire with the 45. And my job was to make sure the ammo, the comms were up, the recruits were everything that you needed logistically was provided for on all the ranges, including the familiar range. And during that part of boot camp, I was responsible for a platoon of recruits. They had like a gap in training, and they became my buildings and grounds guys. I send a few recruits out to supply or to the Army, wherever we needed, just to take care, maintain the buildings and grounds. And I had to take the DI creed, what to not do and to do around recruits. And I had that air of, I don't know, confidence. I guess of I displayed that, and I received a meritorious E3 by the time I left Edson Range. And then I went on to Okinawa, Japan. I was sitting in the G4 office, Third Landing Force Support Battalion, as Assistant Logistics Chief under a Master Gunnery Sergeant as an E3. I had 8
You're
battalions.
fast tracking.
Yeah, and it was that experience. It was the experience of being in the boot camp environment, being around great, senior staff NCOs, and the Oak Leaf guys, the majors, lieutenant colonels, being around that structured leadership, listening, at the time to the Vietnam vets, and most of them were master sergeants, sergeant majors, master gunner sergeants, that type of stuff. And I picked up real quick, and that just led on to other things. After my first tour of Okinawa, I went back to MCAS El Toro. I was part of Marine Air Group 38, Headquarters Squadron 38, then transferred to Communications Squadron 38. Again, as logistics guy, I had 8 squadrons under my belt, Hawk Battalion at Yuma, uh, Air Control Battalion in again in Yuma, and one at the lower end of Pendleton. I did a lot of exercises in and out of 29 Palms, Yuma, Arizona. Got to the point where, I'd have coffee with the Gila monsters out there. You know, it was an experience. And then from there I went back to Okinawa. I was 3rd Landing Support Battalion, Red Patchers. Marines with a little red patch on their hat and their legs. My job there was NCOIC at Kadena 5 Right. That's the part of the flight line. That was part of the flight line that was responsible for all Army, Navy, and Marine Corps flights leaving and coming into and leaving the island. A lot of UDPs, a lot of 747s, C-141, C-5s, C-130 flights, DC-10s, that type of thing. And after that was done, my last unit was 5th Marines, Headquarters Company 5th Marines, where I was Assistant Logistics Chief in 89 and proceeded on through 91. That included Desert Storm, where when the bubble went up, we assembled the largest amphibious force, 22 ships, 22 Navy ships, all the cargo, all the Marines, about 10,000 Marines, everything you needed for war. And in the process, by the time we pulled out of San Diego Pier, we did about 250 military combat loads.
So that's a lot. So can you describe on how that happened? Because I know me, I was a kid during that time, and you're watching
It
everything on TV, and
was,
everything was green screen. What did that like? Was it like, boom, you get a phone call, and they're like, "Hey, we're up," and everything's just happening?
well, part of my job, I had the classified material, and I was monitoring the situation going on in the Middle East. And when Iraq invaded Kuwait, I looked at my roommates. Hey, man, start sorting through your stuff. I can't tell you what's going on. Just follow my lead. What are you going to keep? What are you going to take? What are you going to send home? Once that happened, we had a regiment formation, and we were told we were extended for the good of the service. A majority, 80% of the regiment, that's a little over 9,000 Marines,
Wow.
were extended for the good of the service.
Hmm.
And you get out when we're done with you. And we're making all these logistical plans, compiling data from all the units that are going to join us. Right off the top, they took our tows away. Our tows went to Fort Ord for Soviet a refresher course of Soviet armor training.
Hmm.
And then from there, they flew over, and we had to supplement with reservists, and that includes some elements of our motor transport. Our motor T guys, some of our TO&E was taken from us, and we had to supplement with a truck company out of Lubbock. It was get it done. My time was spent between the gym at Camp San Mateo, looking over schematics of ships and how we're going to put material, all our equipment on in a combat load, not knowing the full scheme of things. And that was developing the whole way, the whole float from San Diego to the Philippines. And then turning around at the break of dawn and then gearing your head for aircraft loads. And this is before we got the hardware to do the dash twos and the load planning on these big cumbersome field computers. You can remember those little 8-inch floppies, well, the big old 8-inch floppies. We were all doing, we were calculators and slide rules and counting fingers and toes, trying to make sure the math is right and getting stuff going on, and getting things out of the air, and once that evolution passed, ships, once we got on ship, it was interesting. The run from San Diego to Hawaii on an amphibious ship normally took a week. This time it took 3 days.
Wow.
There was a sense of urgency, and we recognized that we had to make maybe 8 hours liberty in Hawaii. For me, that was just going over to Pearl, Arizona. Seeing the things I didn't get to see on the Rim Pack 89 a few years prior. Real quick, my last American meal was Subway before I got on ship. Before I got on ship, it was like 2 in the morning. We're just coming in from the club. You know how that goes.
Hmm.
And and the whole way over, it was just, you know, updating the scenario, what was going on, the you know, the tempo, the things tactically were changing very fluidly, and we were trying to make adjustments as we go. You really can't move equipment around on ship. So the only time we had was when we hit the Philippines. And once we hit the Philippines, we reshuffled a little bit, and we had our liberty. You know, we partied like it was every day was the last day of our lives, and you know, you never knew. You know, I had a good rapport with my commanders. You know, I had by that time I had a very good reputation, and I was, you know, I was, you know, having a few beverages with my Major David Bedworth, who I knew in Okinawa. He was a third recon logistics officer, and he was down. He was doing uh, aircraft loadouts with me there. You know, I was mostly on you know, straightening out some of his stuff, and he was really wanting to learn. And his parting words when he left Okinawa to me, he said, "I want you with me. You know, let me know when we hit stateside." And when I hit stateside after my last tour in Okinawa, I was at First Marine Division G4. Less than a month, I was snatched up, and I was at Fifth Marines because of him. And it was a great experience. We had a really good experience. We had a really good relationship, working relationship.
Wow. So you just kept going from bouncing from place to place, and then Desert Storm hits, and you're like, all right, I have to turn everything 10 times faster with
Uh,
not even the technology we have today, doing breaking out almost the abacus, and you're like, gotta check the map
yeah,
and
right.
turn that around in days. Yeah. I guess I didn't ponder that in the 90s that literally you're grabbing like 5 1/4, 8-inch floppy disk and doing everything, and you're doing the same thing that we're doing in 2020 but less technology, and
Yeah,
the only
more.
advantage is you had more people. So
Yeah, we had more people, and you know, the MOS was small enough that you knew who was good and who wasn't. You know, you knew people by, you know, first name basis. You know, who you can count on and who you couldn't. Um, the whole episode, you know, leading up to leaving San Diego, I was running pretty much on caffeine and nicotine the whole time. If I had 4 hours sleep, that was maybe 30 seconds too long for me.
yeah, I
During that,
remember in smoke pits everybody's just like, that
right?
and that.
Yeah, 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 and it was an experience. You know, it was you really, you know, once we hit Oman, we did a little amphibious exercise. I was on the USS Tripoli. The Once we hit the Gulf, once the Tripoli hit the Gulf, we transferred to the Denver. That night that we transferred, we transferred to Tripoli, went on mine sweeping duties, and hit a mine
Oh
that
wow.
evening. That evening. And that would have been a few frames forward of our berthing area or sleeping quarters, where
So
if
pretty
we
much
were,
that close, it sounds like.
yeah, that's when it became real. We was woken up like at 2 or 3 in the morning, by our company commander and briefed and told what happened, and that's where it became. That's where the war became real for us. You know? And from there, night before, my major pulled me aside. He said he wanted me on the forward element of Fifth Marines just because of how he knew me, how he can count on me making decisions on the fly, and so on. So I went in. I transferred from the Denver to the Barber County in LST. All these ships that I'm mentioning are now artificial coral reefs somewhere off the coast of California. They're
Well, there we
decommissioned.
go. That's a
They're
drastic
decommissioned.
difference. Wow.
They're decommissioned. But you know, we went in, and it was like the whole time. Most of our training, it was, hey, diddle diddle, let's go, let's run. Um, I was in the middle of assembling a convoy and the scud alarm. So I got my Alice on my back, mask up, run a couple 100 yards. It seemed like I ran a couple of 100 yards in full gear in about 10 seconds, maybe.
Wow.
You know, and all clear, once all clear came, we were back at it. You know, dust off, press on.
That's a lot to do in 8 years. All those places, then the, Desert Storm and all those things, and then you got out, I guess, in 1991 in the later part of the year. So where did you get out of
I
service, and where was it at?
I got out in Camp Pendleton. I bounced around a little bit in Spring Valley, La Mesa, California area. I worked a little bit in the retail, trying to find my click. I'm a plumber by trade, and I found a fire sprinkler place where I would cut and thread pipe all day, building up the fire sprinkler systems for businesses. Then I got on with a plumbing company out in El Cajon. Um, I did a Smith's out there. I was trying to my marriage at the time. I was married to excuse me, my pen pal, and
Mm.
I fell in love with the idea of marrying my pen pal, kind of World War II like, and the stressors of transitioning too quickly, coupled with trying to run a marriage like boot camp and holding down like 3 jobs just to stay afloat. It all came to a head, and I had to leave. And I went to Colorado Springs. One of the guys that I served with, Bruce Poe, we served we bounced around base to base, almost one behind the other. Um, he told me to come out to the Springs and to Colorado Springs, and I went there, picked up where I left off as a plumber, and I got into the commercial end. I got into the house, the residential end, the union end. I was with local Union 58, um, and it just, I that was my therapy for me, getting back into the hard work ethic that I had before, breaking a sweat, that, and to combat some of the anxiety or trauma that I saw. I really wasn't diagnosed with PTSD because really it wasn't really time to properly diagnose a lot of us since we were ripped out. My psychological exam was just a doctor reviewing my medical record. He said, "Oh, I see you're a construction guy. Go back to construction. It'll be good for you."
So let's get into that a bit, and we'll let the audience hear. What was the hardest and lowest point of getting out of the service?
Um, the hardest point was the transitioning from military to civilian. There wasn't very many outlets for me as far as resume writing, networking, socializing, a lot of the stuff that's going on now in the modern world, or in this day and age. Um, I had an idea of what I wanted to do. I wanted to get back into my roots, what my parents taught me, but I also was trying to get on with aircraft cargo types, FedEx, DHL, just because I love the flight line. That didn't pan out. So I tried trunking companies in, San Diego. If you didn't know somebody who knew somebody who knew somebody, that wasn't going to happen. So I pulled chalks. I left San Diego, went to Colorado Springs, and went back to swinging a pipe wrench and doing what me and my dad talked about. If all else fails, you'll have a trade, and that was my backup plan, and it worked. I put up a bunch of different structures, hospitals, hotels, World Arena in Colorado Springs mine. It was one of my last projects out that way before I came to El Paso in '98. The theater that's in that area, the ice rink. It took 4 Texans on to finish the west side, where it took 12 Coloradoans to finish the east side of the arena. All the
Interesting.
plumbing and fixtures. Yeah, yeah. It was an experience. I got back to my heritage, my roots, and it got me. It kept my sanity, I would say. If I wasn't working like a dog on the job site, I was out fishing or I was out hiking, and my hikes would start maybe at 7,000 elevation, the 7,000 elevation up to about 12. I'd finish.
Wow.
You know,
So you moved to El Paso in what was it? You said
98.
1998. Yeah.
Yeah.
So what made you transform from this war hero to superhero? See you doing such amazing things in El Paso with the veterans groups and whatnot, and we're on boards and several things, and even a commander for one of the units you were talking about. But what made you make that transformation? Because you got to El Paso in 1998, but it sounds like you were still in the trade of plumbing at the time.
I was a plumber still at the time. I was working as a wastewater tech at one of the largest wastewater plants in the city. But my original premise to come down here was help take care of my mom. My mom was 72. She had head and neck cancer at the time. I had my two sisters here in El Paso, and they were stressing, and so my whole intent was just to assess the situation and see what was going on. And I said, you know what, you guys can't do it all alone. So I pulled socks, came down here, and pretty much helped take care of my mom. And I bounced around a couple little plumbing repair shops, a nice big plumbing shop, and then eventually with City of El Paso. That's where my injuries from the ruck marches and the running, the PT started catching up to me. I had a condition called patelliformal syndrome. That's a bowing of a leg or runner's knee. Um, Came to a point where I was in the ER getting injections every other week just to keep up with work, and ended up with eventually a 6-screw 30 millimeter plate below my left knee. It's called the surgery itself is called the high tibial.
Wow.
And understand the tempo of the VA at the time. There were close to 1 million claims behind. I was 35% at the time. I had my first surgery, which was a smaller plate that failed. The plate, the bone graft, it was a failure. I had to wait a month and a half for the doctor to give me the upgrade. And then 2 weeks later, I had developed a clot. He had to go in after that. And I'm at 35%. And normally, when you have a surgery on a service-connected disability, 100% is pretty much, it used to take 30 days or 30 to 60 days. In my case, it took 18 months. I had to resign my position as an operator because I wasn't sure how long I was going to take to recover. It took me 18 months to get a decent stride back, to ambulate. And the whole time I'm at 35%. I'm debating on rent or ramen, literally rent or ramen. Looking at my wife, thankfully had 2 jobs. She worked for a school district here and she worked retail. So we had some income coming in. We was able to maintain the whole process. A couple of times utilities got cut off, but there wasn't nothing big. We managed. It was maybe the lights came off maybe for a day or two, and then well, I didn't live far from where Stephen Mills began his veterans nonprofit thing, and that's where I started interacting with him. He helped me out a little bit, whenever I needed it. Come by, see me, and his whole thing was trying to feed 30 veterans. That's how he started. That was his premise, and now he's expanded to 400. He's a good friend. He's someone I consider a mentor as far as veterans organizations go. I wish we had more Stephen Mills running veterans organizations like that. And and the whole time with my leg, I said there's got to be a better way. We need to figure out a better way to take care of our vets here in El Paso. Because I've seen a lot of neck rubbing and eye rolling. Well, and that wasn't cutting it for me. So I sat down and started exploring veterans commissions, committees throughout the state, throughout the nation, and how they worked and what they did. And pretty much what they did, they try to fill in the gaps that federal government's lacking, so on and so forth. A lot of the veterans committees, right off the top, would get a veteran a free ride on mass transit. So, well, there's something we can try, so I talked it over with Bill, talked it over with a couple other veterans that I hold close to me. And I said, okay, let's give it a shot. Talked to a few city council members, and after some of the city council members weren't very keen on the idea, like I don't know, like we're trying to do something underhanded, or that's what it felt like to me when the whole thing came up for a vote. And I felt a little slighted at the time. Really, these are veterans, and the whole premise behind the committee was just identifying that 1%. That was less than 500 veterans who are living couch to couch or sleeping in their car, what have you. that was the whole premise behind the Veterans Affairs Advisory Committee. And it, fortunately, the motion passed. We got the vote, to start it up, and it's the way it's worded. There's no sundown. It cannot go away by anything. The way the ordinance, the way the ordinance is worded.
Yeah, that's
And
very important and key because we see so many legislations go over and change because of words and interpretations and definitions. And every day we're seeing something different nationwide, state, and local. So that's
right,
impressive when you get the wording right. So it can't be reneged or rescinded.
right. Well, it's in its fifth year. The biggest hurdle we tackled was transportation. We sat down when we formed, and we got all our committee members from each district of the city. We sat down at one of the city buildings before we started having live sessions, and we hammered out specifics on what we wanted to work on: transportation, education, health, housing, and there's another one, meds or something like that. It took us 18 months to bang out something reasonably acceptable for mass transit. That's a 90-day. Any disabled vet can go to Sun Metro. That's our mass transit system with their disability paperwork and get a free pass, temporary pass for 90 days.
Yeah, that's helpful and key during those times. It
Yeah,
seems
and a veteran needs access to the VA, to groceries, to their doctors, and a lot of us don't have reliable transportation. The 1% that I'm talking about really don't have reliable transportation, and
yeah,
especially a day like today where it's going to climb up into the hundreds. Paso, you need a way to get around. And I with what's going on now with the city. Beaumont has a brand new hospital out on the east end of town. They'll be leaving the compound here. I don't live far from Beaumont Army Hospital, and the VA is attached to it. But that's the prime real estate where we can do something better. Tiny home projects, which our city ordinances don't allow for whatever reason. The zoning it doesn't allow for tiny homes in El Paso for whatever reason, and that's something that I think that we need here in El Paso. And we can also install backup programs to get veterans better on their feet, get off their dependencies, whatever, that type. Similar to the stand down that goes on in San Diego. I think we can do that here. I feel
yeah.
very
That's
strongly about it.
And I would agree. That's great progress that you guys are making and next steps to go over and do that. So, love the story. Love that you went over and made that transformation. That was a huge ordeal to go over and do. You recently shared that you also lost a lot of weight. So, that's a huge transformation story, too. So, that's fantastic. So, you've been transforming superhero status inside the body and outside the body, which is fantastic. So,
Yeah.
we'd love for you to share 3 superhero tactics that you would either gave yourself when you got out of the service or you give to your fellow veterans as you're serving them in El Paso.
On 3 tactics, have a plan for transitioning. Start as early as 18 months before EAS. Look at the geography of where you're at. Do you want to stay where you're at, or do you want to go back home? The reason I'm saying that, El Paso loses on retaining active duty soldiers leaving Fort Bliss. We lose out. We only retain 13 to 400 monthly,
Mm.
and for whatever reason, have a plan. Whatever make sure you have a very good broken down civilian version of your MOS. Nobody knows what an 11 Bravo is out here in the real world. Nobody cares what an 0131 is, and that's an administrative clerk in the Marine Corps.
Hmm.
Make sure you have the wording right. Um, again, then network, socialize, hit the job fairs, talk to any and everybody. If there's a veterans, what we have here is a veterans business association. If you have something similar in wherever you want to go, seek them out. You want to start up vocational rehab, educate yourself. The one thing that has always stayed with me, even though I've been out since '91, is seek self-improvement. Whatever, however, whenever, try to make yourself better than you were a minute ago, an hour ago, 24 hours ago, a week ago, a month ago. It's doable. It's all about mindset. It's all, you were at one time, hard charging back in the day. And then you don't, for me, I've never really, my pack came off a little bit, but it's back on. And right now I'm looking to expand I had bariatric surgery in 2018. I had conditions ranging from Desert Storm that affected some of my gastro stuff.
Mhm.
So the best choice for me was gastric bypass, and I'm taking that knowledge that I have in nutrition, exercise, and mindset, and I'm planning on attending Arizona State University for a health coach, and with a specific specialty in bariatrics.
Oh, wow.
Because
They have a virtual
I'm
campus
gonna,
then?
yeah, they have a virtual campus. Now I'm looking to do that. If everything goes well, hopefully I can fast track this in about 18 months. I don't like waiting around. I like to make things. I'm not that. It's not in my DNA to
Yeah.
and even at my age, 55, I still have that little thing keeping me going. It's all about attitude and what you want to do with yourself, staying focused. And if you need help, reach out. Somebody's around to motivate you, or motivate you, give you a little kick in the butt if you need it. You know, listen to listen to you. There's a lot of support out there. You just got to seek it out. Find yourself reliable veteran service officers. DAV has trained veteran service officers here. The Texas Veterans Commission in El Paso at one time, during their highest peak, were processing about 600 claims a week.
That's a
And
lot. Wow.
and then they were phenomenal. They had a phenomenal turnover rate. They got the veteran what they needed. If you need education, use your Montgomery jail, whatever the bill is. I'm not very familiar. I'm a VEEP era vet. That's my era. That was two for one deal. For every dollar you put into VEEP, the government put in $2. We'll double it.
Yeah.
And if you're a Texas vet that enlisted in Texas, use the Hazelwood Act. That's in your favor. That helps with your education as well. There's all these resources that that's out there, and you need to take advantage of. You need to really educate yourself, focus on what you want to do, and not just well, I'm out, I might as well get started. You're way behind the power curve nowadays if that's your attitude.
I would totally agree because it takes 6 to 9 months to find a good job and then everything else. And then networking if you're going to start a business even sooner and everything else. So, yes, that's great wisdom to go and pass along. So, if I remember correctly, the agency that you're working with is veteransnonprofit.org, right?
Yeah, that's somebody that I support. Steve Mills, like I said, he started from his original plan, 30 veteran families, and now he's expanded to 400. He has a deal with Amazon Prime, where a portion of whatever you buy off Amazon Prime goes to him. CFC campaign, really great guy. He's really modest. He has his peer support groups. Been watching him forever. Every now and then I stick my head in. I go, well, after my weight loss, I gave him about 7 bags of clothes, and they asked, do you want a tax thing? I said, no, I really don't. It doesn't. I'm not in it for the bennies. I'm
Mhm.
here to help you. He helped me, so I'm just returning the favor. And he does it without really knowing you, and he does a lot. And really, like I said, I really wish we had more individuals like that within our veteran community that would just do it off, give their shirt off their backs and not ask for anything in return.
And that's really awesome. I love that you shared the story. You're always still uplifting people on a regular basis. We want to thank you for your time. We want to check one last thing for comments and then close it out. Uh, Looks like Kristen Peterson is watching from Chandler, Arizona. Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah.
And Colleen James is supporting from El Paso. So that's fantastic. So again, Dave, I want to thank you. David, I want to thank you for joining on the show. And if you like David's message, you can go over and support him and lift him up to the next level. We do have a TV show that airs every Wednesday, War Hero Superhero. It's an elevated version of the show. And if you want to help Dave to be on the show, you just need to give 3 seconds of your time. That's 1 view, because that's how Facebook algorithms work. If he gets the most views within 3 days, just by your 3 seconds, we prefer you to watch all 35 minutes and glean off the wisdom. But if you only have 3 seconds to spare out of your busy day, give 3 seconds to give that view. And if he gets the most views within 72 hours, then we uplift him up. He still has 3 other war hero superhero stories to compete with. So you just go over and give him 3 seconds of your time and go over and help him lift up. And then we will announce who it's going to be for next month on our TV show, War Hero Superhero. So David, thanks for your time.
Anytime.
And privilege to go over and interview, honor to go over and to serve with you. Thank you for serving our country, you know, when I was little, because I never knew what you guys did. And that's very much appreciated. That allows me to go serve you guys now. And we will see you guys on the flip side. So thank you for your time. And thank you, guests, for going over and watching.
Peace.